Hi, and welcome to Reality Check. I'm your host, Lou Meyer, and our guest this week is author and our director, Joe Lidwell. Joe, thanks for coming on.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Now, Joe has recently completed a book that he's been working on for quite a while. It's called The Axe is God, not The Axe is God, Lou Meyer. And this is it. I don't know if you can see this very well, but this is one heck of a tome, and it's informative and all over the place with great information. Joe, how long did it take you to actually compile this?
I think it's been about at least 7 years.
7 years, that's what I figured.
Since we were over in the old studio.
So, yeah.
Right.
And information from all over the place.
Yeah, that's true. If you check the bibliography, it'll show you my sources, or most of them anyway.
And, the book kind of, some of us would like to call some stuff conspiracy theory, but other things that are in there, it's not a theory, it's really going on.
Well, there's a lot of history out there that people haven't been told about,
Yeah,
So,
for sure. Well, it's, the people's history of the United States, the history we get doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, Howard Zinn's history of the United States is
Yeah.
like a different story,
So let's, there's so much in here. Where would you like to start talking about it?
Well, I don't know.
We have, how about if we go to, you want to go to crop circles?
Well, yeah, we can have the photo of the crop circle, I guess. It's pretty interesting. Now that's, we all know what crop circles are. They've been around for how long now? 20 years?
At least. Yeah.
Or so. And it's funny, they started out being nothing but circles. And then gradually they worked into really beautiful geometric designs. And, that kind of gives you the impression that somebody was kind of learning how to do it as they went along. And, we're really not cut in on this whole crop circle phenomenon. In other words, the media doesn't really cover it. Okay, so now you've gotten to the point where you've got this guy from outer space. Okay, so that's not a geometric pattern, and when they were geometric patterns, you could say maybe it was on account of the grid patterns, or the lay energy, or that sort of thing somehow manifesting in the crops.
How big do you think that particular picture, in the real crop
I don't
circle?
know. I would say that's as big as any of them. That's probably a
Like
quarter of a mile or so.
Oh.
Or, half of that, an eighth of a mile. But you see the disc on the right, that's some kind of code, intergalactic scripture, if you will. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the alien he's the standard alien that you would expect to see. But, I made the connection between this guy and the last alien that we were confronted with, which was the talking snake in the tree in the Garden of Eden. Okay, so he was like, however long ago that was, before Jesus, way before that.
Adam and Eve is
right.
The beginning of humanity?
Right, so the story is that there's this essentially an alien, unless you think it's actually a serpent that was, a snake that crawled up the tree and was talking to Adam and Eve. I don't think that's quite what it was. I think the case is, you can make the case that there were extraterrestrials here at that time. And
that's one of the things I always wondered about that. Because, who's comfortable with a snake climbing up a tree and talking to you? Nobody. So they had to be familiar with right. Whatever that entity was at first.
Right. Well,
if they even existed.
Yeah, and the idea is that it's a serpent, which is right. The same thing as an alien, or it looks quite a bit like the guy in the crop circle. If we could have that other picture, Terry, of the sculpture of the Adam and Eve.
Maybe you can move it over towards me.
So if we could have that other picture, Terry, of the sculpture. Now here's Adam and Eve, and I don't know where this sculpture is. I got it off the net. I think it's in Europe somewhere. But you'll notice the roots of the tree there are, that's a serpent. So whenever they talk about the tree in the Garden of Eden, they're actually talking about a family tree. And all that scripture, and this is in Norse mythology too. I have some prose in there from the Vikings that talks about the Yggdrasil tree.
Oh yeah, I read about that. You know,
Right.
also in Zeitgeist, they run you through all of the different similar creation stories
Right.
from all over the place, where there's no way they could connect with each other and share a story.
Well, it's the Moses story is the same all over the place in many different cultures. The same way with the Jesus and Mary story. I mean, the Zeitgeist flick brought that out quite a bit.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned.
So, you know, it's part of the old, that the religion that we have now is really based on the old pagan stuff that came before that. And I'm saying that's based on the old demonolatry, where it was all about human sacrifice.
Can we talk about some other places where the serpent imagery comes out?
Well, it's in the corporate logos all over the place. Our Arabus, which is the graphic of the snake swallowing its own tail.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's all over the ancient stuff, and it's in those tarot cards that I have the pictures of in there, if you can find it. They're not. We don't have those on
the other. Yeah, and also, like, you know, the interesting stuff to me is like where you look at the Pope's hat. All right, here. I don't know if we have this picture or not, but let's take a look right here. Over here. Here's the Pope.
Right.
There's the Pope's hat. You know, they didn't just say, hey, you know, let's make a hat that looks like, you know, looks silly. There's a reason for that imagery.
Yeah,
and it looks like an upturned.
That's the mouth of a sea serpent.
Mouth of a serpent.
And you'll notice the bent cross there too, which is, you know, a particularly hideous version of the torture victim. It's like they exaggerated the sacrifice thing. And you know, there are all kinds of people who tell you that all these power structures are satanic at the inner cores and higher levels to begin with. But the hat represents the ancient sea serpents who are these extraterrestrials. And what I'm saying is here they are again now in the crop circles.
You know, and there's been a lot of information written now. David Icke and other fellows, you know, who people would say, well, they're off the deep end
right.
in the other direction. However, there are too many books and too much corroborating information.
Well, it's true that, you know, 20 different guys could be copying one guy's stuff, but you know, this is really in the Bible. All this stuff about, you know, the extraterrestrial, whoever they were, floating around up in the sky and leading Moses, you know, on his quest to, you know, regain the Holy Land or whatever it was. You know, he's following a craft in the sky, essentially is what it is, or it could certainly be interpreted that way. It's the same way with the Bethlehem story where the three wise men were, you know, following the light in the sky. Well, is that a star? What's a star? I mean, a star is just a light in the sky,
Mm-hmm.
And then the ancient Sumerian text, the stuff that they dug up, that's like 5,000 years old, has, it always constantly refers to these winged discs, okay? And those are, you know, I'm assuming those are the, you know, the spaceships.
What about, incidentally, the cave paintings they find in the Southwest where they have
Right.
really graphic imagery of what look like flying saucers or aliens or guys in spacesuits or anything like that?
Yeah, the cavalry made mention of them back in the 1800s. They were called flying horseshoes is what they called them. I read that someplace. But, you know, and UFOs are all over the place, let's face it. They're happening, you know.
There are so many folks that have taken pictures or video and people that are willing to discuss it. You know, to refute it is almost silly.
But the idea is, one of the ideas is that's why we have all these different races. There are basically like, you know, 5 different races. Well, the idea is those came from 5 different breeds of aliens.
But yeah, the thing that is puzzling to me is the lizard, you know, or your snake, serpent kind of thing of it. Like, how is somebody with no hands going to fly a spaceship?
Well, you can still have hands and be of, you know, a reptilian bloodline. And apparently that's who was running things in prehistory before we had the kind of religion that we have now. That's an interpretation that you can get, and that's Zechariah Sitchin's interpretation of the ancient Sumerian text, the cuneiform texts that were dug up there in the clay tablets. It tells the story of the first successful crossbreed between the aliens and what were called the prime mates, or the apes. and he was called the Adama.
Can we like zoom forward a few thousand years and talk about how this affects the world as we know it today?
Well, you know, what's wrong is the question. It should be a question in everybody's mind. Why do we still have war? And why are we still suffering with all this stuff? Environmental degradation is getting to the critical point now. I mean, it's going to...
Right.
You know.
Why? How do people that get elected to public office ignore the reality of everything and go ahead and vote in destructive stuff and everybody who participates in that?
I don't think voting really has anything to do with it. I think the government as we know it is a public relations program that's put on by the people who really have charge to keep control of the public, and so they can do whatever it is they want to do.
And so who can we say that is? It's like bankers or
Well, I think organized religion and establishment religions are harkened back the farthest to the ancient history, and those same structures have been in charge ever since the time of the pyramids. I mean, it's interesting. You look at the pyramids and you look at the sacrificial center at Baalbek in Lebanon, and there are all these structures there that you can't really. We can't say how they were built at this time. I mean, we're not sure we'd be able to build them.
Right, yeah, the same thing with the pyramids and everything. The reason I wanted to come into the present about this is your book is more than just like a cocktail table book where you can sit there and go, oh, this is interesting. If you follow all of the information through to now, it's startling and thought-provoking as to how is the world really working, or are we destroying the planet and we're just on borrowed time right now? And if that's true, how come good isn't happening? Why isn't there like a major swing towards fabulous good? Like this guy Barack Obama, right? He gets into office under this whole campaign of change and making things better, and we recognize that all these things are wrong, and yet we've got the same exact thing going on, and nobody seems to be paying any attention to it.
Well, everybody thinks that establishment religion, including Buddhism, is supposed to be the force for good in the world, and to me, it's extremely telling that Catholicism and Buddhism and Judaism and the heads of all these religions haven't by now convened some kind of a global symposium to figure these things out. I mean, they should say, okay, we're here, we're staying here, we're gonna have a meeting here, the whole world's media is invited, and we're gonna keep talking about it until we figure out why. Why do we still have military?
Yeah,
why
who's really supporting all that? They're taking our money, they're taking tax dollars to make this stuff happen.
Well, it isn't just tax dollars now, it's past that point.
I know they're printing their own money.
Now they just print it, and the debt is going on to generations that aren't even here yet.
But we've got to be, not just the finances and the politics and all that kind of fluffy crap that doesn't really mean anything. It's like the resources, the lives of the people, the planet, the destruction of the planet. We're getting to a point now where, hello, you guys, we may be past where the planet could sustain itself. A nuclear, like half-life of a nuclear spent uranium thing, what is that, 500,000 years or something?
Well,
they're using depleted uranium in bullets and in tanks. It's like, hello, that can't happen.
Yeah, it's totally radioactive. And that's going to be where you have, Gulf War syndrome. It's this,
or anything.
This radiation poisoning, which has been showing up on the wind in Europe and Asia.
Heck, we're finding bad Chinese air up here on Banner Mountain. Everything travels everywhere in the air.
So, how could it be that, they would use that?
Frankly, I don't understand any of it. It seems to me like crazed maniacs are running everything, or at least have control of everything.
It seems that way from our perspective, but if you look at it from their world, it makes perfect sense. And, Ike's idea was that the people who are running the world are much more closely bred with the extraterrestrials.
I can imagine some inbreeding had something to do with that.
Well, he says, they can shift shape back into reptilian form or whatever their alien form is. They get on a kind of a different frequency, and they have to ingest human flesh and human blood to remain in the human shape. He said,
right when you get into that, you're losing 90% of your
I know,
audience.
that's true. And the first time I heard David Icke on Chamberlain's program on KVMR, I thought, well, this guy's crazy. He's over the edge, or he's just trying to sensationalize to sell books. But the book he mentioned,
all of the above.
The book he mentioned at that time was The Biggest Secret, right? Mm-hmm. You have a copy.
Yeah,
of it,
I have
right?
that.
And when I read that book, the guy opened my eyes to so many things that had been or were right in front of my face my whole life, and I never knew them. I never realized. So I thought, well, I'll give it a chance. So I read his bibliography, and I found the books that he refers to, and I read a whole bunch of those. And you find out before too long that there really is a strong circumstantial case there that the human race was, progenitored, if that's the word, by, an extraterrestrial race of beings. And they could still be in charge of things, which would explain, why we still have all these problems in the world.
Hey, can we, let's segue over into some of the images that we've captured that you have in the book. Pick something and we'll talk.
The next one on the line.
Right
okay,
here.
now
spirals.
To me, the real religion of the world, okay, the authentic religion of the world should be pantheism. Catholicism and the rest of them, Judaism, those are pretty much man-made religions. So if you're a pantheist, it means you worship the universe itself, okay?
Yeah.
And all you're really doing at that point is granting the attributes that people want to grant to their God to the universe itself, which is infinity and...
Well, also nature, really.
Well, okay,
some of the pantheistic, all their gods are personifications of a higher ideal or a situation that recurs in nature or that sort of thing.
Right. Well, the establishment religion people always, they're always big on this creator thing. Mm-hmm. They give you the idea, they're always telling you that the universe was created and God created the universe. Okay, well, I'm saying the universe wasn't created. There's no such thing as creation. And once you get to that point, you realize, well, the universe has just always been here. I mean, it kind of boggles your brain a little bit to try to,
it
contemplate
all does,
that.
Frankly, yeah.
But then it's no crazier than saying God has always been here, right? Mm-hmm. And that God snapped his fingers and made all this stuff happen. So anyway, now, in line with this new discovery of this thing called sacred geometry, okay, you see the spirals in nature everywhere. Can we have that picture back? So there they are. I mean, it's like the spirals are in the flowers, they're in the galaxies, the spiral patterns in the DNA. Mm-hmm. And the gravity manifests in a spiral. So to me, that has some kind of a sacramental significance, the spiral. And
at least an energetic significance.
And I think that's the source of the word spirit, is actually spiral. And the Holy Spirit originally was, this orgone energy that suffuses the surface of the whole planet if the whole planet is in its natural state, which is, the idea here is to get into the new paradigm, where in the new paradigm, you're only going to have 1 or 2 billion people on a planet, and we're going to put the planet back together the same way it was 2,000 years ago. And
how are we going to get rid of these other 4 billion? We're going to send them to another planet?
Well, there's a logical way to do it, which is to just stop rewarding people for having kids, tax breaks and so forth. And if people have more than 2 kids, then you have to start charging them.
You make it cost prohibitive to have children?
Well, yeah, I mean, why not, So look at what the church does, though, is totally the opposite. It
encourages childbirthing.
Right. And at the same time they're doing that, they're encouraging all the immigration into the United States, and which is actually discombobulating society here. Sooner or later it will, So it's like Ike said, the Catholic Church has always been such a major drag on humanity.
It sure sounds like it. We have a few more images and about 5 minutes left. We should take a look at some of that.
Yeah, we'll go to the next image here in a minute, as soon as we get it up. So that's the Jezreel Plain in Israel, which is supposed to be the site of Armageddon. And there was a city on top of that mountain, and that's the ruins of it. And I believe it was called Ophir, and the city of Ophir, and that's where you get the word Oprah. Okay, and I think also the word offering, because the PH is just an F, So the offerings were what were, submitted to the demon gods in the times of human sacrifice.
Can we just clarify just one thing? When you're saying the pH is actually an F, when you talk linguistics, it's the sound of the word. It doesn't matter how it's spelled.
Right.
Like you're saying, 2 Ks make an X. That's the sound of the X.
Right.
So just to be clear, so when you read Joe's book, you're going to see a lot of information like this, where words will be taken apart. And substitute letters are put in to make these kinds of points.
Right, and the idea is to pay attention to the sound. And the sounds, what I'm saying is the sounds that we're using today are harken back to the original meanings. So, the main concept in those times, I think, was that there was a master race. And the master race would have been these demon aliens who gave us religion as we know it, which is based on fear and terrorism, essentially, which is why they have the torture victim nailed up on the cross, and is why they threaten you with hell. Okay, that's a leftover. And I think also the circumcision ritual is a leftover form of sacrifice. Plus, I think it's designed really to totally traumatize, babies.
Hey, talk a little bit about the sacrifice idea, because that's something I could never understand at all. If let's just call the universal deity God, for a good word that everybody recognizes, and God puts these animals and plants and people on the planet. He gives them life. Gives them maybe a reason for being or whatever. But yet other people think it's a real good idea to kill those things as an offering to the God that made them. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, here's my substitute victim. This is him rather than me.
Well, why not just paint a picture of a victim rather than use some poor person or animal?
Well, I think because the terrorism was really real. And here we are again. Our whole society is based on now. It's all about this war on terror.
I know it's all this phony baloney crap. But can we go to a couple more of those images there, because we only get about 5 minutes left on the show, and let's talk about this right here.
Okay, now this came from
these scurrilous
This
characters?
came from Webster Tarpley. Okay, and he was in the Zeitgeist movie.
Uh-huh.
He had a little cameo in there. This is a picture that was taken in a house in Germany in the 1930s. And the guy in the middle with the sailor suit on is George Herbert Walker Bush. And that's a German Navy uniform on he's wearing. The guy on the right's his father, Prescott Bush, the senator, who was, these guys did everything they could to back the Nazis. And the guy in the white shirt down in the front with the necktie on is Reinhard Gehlen. He was the head SS officer, who was migrated along with a lot of his people, probably thousands of people, into the United States after World War II, right at the close of World War II. And all those SS people and high German officials were placed into the federal police agencies in the government, the FBI, the CIA, and all that. And the guy on the top is, meanwhile, at the same time that was happening, we were murdering millions of German prisoners who had surrendered. There are books out there that say this. And that's another one of those parts of the history that was left out of the books. The guy on the top is Joseph Mengele. And he's, if you remember Arizona Wilder.
The Angel of Death.
Yeah, Arizona Wilder, a mind control victim, survivor, whistleblower, said that she was her personal trainer. And the guy on the right in the white T-shirt is Otto Skorzeny. He was Adolf Hitler's personal bodyguard, favorite commando, and this is his picture. And he died in California in the 70s. And I think the guy on the left sitting down by the piano is Martin Bormann, who was another big-time Nazi, although now they're saying he was actually a double-agent spy, and one of the women there next to the Bushes, I think the one on my right I think that's their sister Dorothy. So anyway, the idea is that, while you're thinking that we're at total war with the Germans and we kill every German we see, essentially the higher-ups are working together with them throughout the whole episode. I mean, if you read Charles Hyham's book, Trading with the Enemy, it's really good, and he documents the paperwork on how the bankers from the United States and England and Russia and Japan and China and France were all financing the Germans. They all financed that whole Nazi thing. And they were having their regular meetings all through World War II. And that's what the intelligence community is really, that's one of their functions, is to facilitate these meetings. They're the ones who hustle the principals in this through the lines so they don't get, they mark their vehicles and stuff. And I think what happens is the higher you get up in the intelligence community, the more you realize you're actually working for some global cabal or organization. And you realize that at a certain point, you're really not working for the United States anymore. And I mean, look what's going on with the United States. Basically, the United States is going down a toilet. I mean, the money's no good. We have no manufacturing base.
We have a lousy reputation in the world.
Everybody hates us.
Hates
our borders are totally wide open for anybody who wants to come here, and it's a plan.
So as you folks can see, we just touched on a couple of things from this book. I mean, there's so much more. We have one more photo.
Let's have it if we got time for it. Okay, the Masons are big in the creation of the United States, and they're all over the world, really. And the idea here is that the square checker pattern on the hats is, you find that also on the rockets, and it's on that fighter jet, and that's Masonic code. And the Masons are, they have the G symbol with the square and the compass. Okay, that's the G, as we now can relate to, means sacred geometry. They understand the sacred geometry, and those are apparently the secrets that they keep.
Okay, so here we are. It's the end of our show. It's definitely worth a long time reading of this book. But a lot of this information and stuff like that is available on the internet. The place we're very fortunate now to have the internet and all those infinite resources. So do your own research, but take a look at this. And we got to go. Thanks for watching the show. And thanks to my crew: Sam, Rick, Gail, Terry, not Joe, Scott, and Tricia. And we'll see you again next week. If you or anybody else could be a good guest for Reality Check, give me an email at loumeyer@nccn.net. If you want to get Joe's book, theaxesgod@gmail.com.
Yeah, or barkingdeer@infostations.net.com. Excuse me. That's my email.